All right, looks like we are live. What's going on, James?
Hey, Usman, just hanging out here in bright and sunny California. We're here for San Francisco at the RSA conference. It's been going on since yesterday, and will go on until Thursday. But excited to get in here and talk a little bit more about telcos with you, my friend.
That's awesome. You answered my next question. I was going to ask you, where in the U.S. are you today? And
Yeah, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
yeah, that's right, Mr. Cyberbeard. Well, it's a pleasure to have you. I've been, ever since Brooke Lee joined our team, they've been keeping me in the closet. So this is a surprise appearance, on this webinar for me. I'm a little rusty, so everyone's gonna need to hang in there while I remember how to do these things. But really appreciate you joining me here and talking about what I feel is really important, and we'll let our audience decide for themselves whether it's important for them or not.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
All right. So to kind of kick things off, right, I wanted to really touch on something Rev.io has been talking about for years now, but we really went into it quite heavily last year when we launched our PSA. What we've been seeing really ever since COVID is this convergence between managed service providers, communications providers, integrators, really driving a lot of our traditional communication provider telco clients. I'll try to use the term telco going forward, given the title of this, to really take a look at their business and think about, hey, how can we evolve? Unfortunately, the reality is communication services are being pretty commoditized, right? Prices are going down. There's a lot of ways of adding connectivity, UCaaS, VoIP, whatever you want to call it, to your stack. On the end customer side, a lot of businesses are expecting more from their vendors and want to consolidate contracts. This is actually a big threat. Like, one of the things that I always like to point out with our communications clients and telco clients is MSPs are also continuing to adopt communication services, and they're already in a great place to do that because they're already providing cybersecurity, they're already providing networking, and telecom is just a very logical thing for them to do that. So I think there's a couple of different reasons why we feel at Rev.io that communications providers, if you're a traditional communications provider, you really need to look beyond connectivity. How can we grow our business? How can we evolve our business? And with that, I think really cybersecurity is kind of the next natural step, right? Where do you go from here? How can you compete in this aggressive market? Security is pretty logical because you know what? You're already servicing these clients with mission critical solutions. Connectivity is very much a mission critical solution. Clients are already trusting you with this connectivity support. You're already managing the networks in a lot of cases. And so there's just a lot of natural alignment between the communications offerings and the cybersecurity offerings, so almost like a layer of protection. Now, James, I know you've had some experience with this as well, and you've probably talked to tons of telcos and MSPs too. I figured you'd probably agree with this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I was just in where was I? I think Orlando, or yeah, I think it was in Orlando, where we were celebrating. Yeah, it was absolutely Orlando. So it was a Zero Trust World that we were at, and we went to the after party thrown by MSP Initiative, right? And that after party had a ton of telcos there. Um, and in fact, I've ran into a couple at the IT Expo as well. These folks are providing great services, but they're not realizing what they're leaving on the table, right? When they're bringing all of their experience and expertise from the telco side, whether it be, trunk slamming, sipping, whatever it may be, they that's really kind of the bulk of their knowledge because that's where they've lived for so long. What they tend to forget is that, well, if they're not offering, backup, disaster recovery, antivirus for the systems that are utilizing this telephony system, they're leaving a lot on the table. And they also don't want to necessarily take more of their time, right? They don't want to bite off more than they can chew. That's where Acronis really comes into play, right? We've really kind of built our platform around really making a technician's life easier. When I started my tenure in IT, right, 16 years ago, I started as a support engineer. I remember having to pass tickets to an L2 or an L3 because I didn't know how to use certain tools, right?
Right.
And it wasn't that I didn't want to learn, it's that I just didn't have the opportunity to.
Mhm.
Now, when you're looking at how many fragmented solutions there are, how many silos there are, right? Whether it be operations, whether it be automation, whether it be management, whether it be protection, there's a lot of tools, right? And when we talk to MSPs, and I'm sure Usman, you've had the same experience. These folks are using 30 plus tools just to get their day-to-day jobs
Right.
done, right? And that sounds pretty intimidating if you're a
Yeah,
telco and you're just doing one thing.
that's
So
right.
ultimately, right, why is security the next step? Well, because we have to secure what it is that we're working on, right? Just because you have an infrastructure there, just because you have a network there, doesn't mean that it won't go down, right? So again, an all-in-one platform really makes it easier for a technician to be able to manage everything from one location, not just from one location, but to be able to dabble and be able to get experience in each one of those tool sets from one location, right? Um, Acronis, when I first started at Acronis 8 years ago, we were very telco heavy, right? We were backing up cPanel and Plesk, and we were, doing a lot of domain protection, things like that, which is a high opportunity for a telco, right?
Mhm.
From there, we started building out some integrations with telco tools, right? So, like I said, cPanel and Plesk earlier, right? We had the
Mhm.
ability to back those systems up. We had the ability to restore those databases, be able to restore individual web pages, things like that, right? Making it super simple for a telco to say, look, in addition to me building out your telephony, me building out your website, we can also back that website up in case something were to happen, and then also
Right.
make it easier for us to scale it. And
Yeah.
then from there, right, being in 50 plus data in 50 plus data centers, 50 plus countries, right, we understand that there's a bunch of different compliancies that we need to support. So with that being said, right, it just makes sense to have it all in one location so that we could say, all right, everything that we're leaving on the table now is something we can offer you. So
Mhm.
in addition to this, low level telephony bundle, right, let's talk about what else we can service you with.
Well, that makes total sense, man. I think one, I think for this slide, I was thinking in my head like, there's not. I can't think of a better, vendor to vendor, better together story than Rev.io plus Acronis. We've been, I think, working together now for close to a year, and the way that the organizations operate fundamentally is so similar, right? It's we
Hmm.
know that we grow when our clients grow, and how can we make it easy for our clients to grow? How can we really, provide them the additional tools and services to do that. As we've been offering Cyber Protect, Rev.io Cyber Protect, powered by Acronis to our telecom clients, that's kind of one of the biggest things that they're always, surprised by is like, holy smokes, everything is in one, like one agent, one console. I don't have to go get a separate backup solution and an EDR solution. Maybe we can actually do this. Maybe we can, actually transform our business here. I did want you to touch on the whole backup thing a little bit, because one of the things that does sometimes come up is, hey, Acronis is a backup company. And you and I were talking about this in Chicago. I want to say a couple of weeks ago at the GTIA conference, and the way that you explained it to me was just absolutely fantastic. And I think it makes a lot of sense, right? When shit hits the fan, what is the one thing that you need to make sure works? Is the backup mechanism, and you need to make sure that the backup is solid. So
It's not
I
just the
think,
backup, Usman, it's the ability to recover, right?
right.
So, I mean, it comes down to it's great to do as much mitigation that you can do on the left, but
Mhm.
when something gets through, and that's the reason why we're on business so that we can fix it when something gets through. What do you do, right? And there's been so many conversations that I've had about like the swivel chair tax.
Right.
How much time does your technician spend going from one machine to another machine or from one console to another console that
Mhm.
can't be billed for?
Right.
Right, and I think the ultimate conversation that we really enjoyed having was, why did Acronis get out of backup? Well, we never
Mhm.
got out of backup, but we are not solely focused on backup. Everything that we've done as a company has been a direct result of a need of an MSP, right? We have multiple verticals, if you will, right? We've got your small home office, we've got our enterprise, and then we've got our cloud business. And that
Mhm.
cloud business really is it has grown leaps and bounds in the past 8 years. I'm not saying since I've been here, but
Yeah.
while I have been here for 8 years, I've watched this product go from being focused on backup and disaster recovery to being focused on the whole spectrum, right?
Right.
It's no longer just, hey, how are you doing your backups? How are you recovering? It's
Mhm.
how are you protecting? How are you managing? And how are you automating all of your IT deployments, right? Especially your small to medium ones. These are the ones that people are creating new businesses every single day to steal your clients. Not to steal your clients, but to build their brand. And if you're leaving things on the table, they're picking them up.
Right. Right. That I think that yeah that we got to just keep repeating that on this recording. I think to hammer that in because I think that's the biggest thing, right? It's not just about growing your business. I think that's like a huge value, and we've got a slide later in this deck here talking about the EBITDA multiples that you can get with adding this on. That, don't get me wrong, is very very important. But just the fact that the again, I relate it back to convergence, right? The fact that your competitors, you're having new competitors that you were never competing against 5 years ago. Now you're competing against them, and guess what? They're offering a lot more than you're offering, and that's what the businesses are asking for these days. Let's chat a little bit about the solutions and the services that you guys provide, or that Acronis Cyber Protect has. I think you've touched on some of these already, right? The Microsoft 365, that's a hot topic. I think that's one of the things a lot of our clients are looking at is providing Microsoft services. So, adding in protection and backup and security on top of that makes a lot of sense. Securing endpoints on the I recently learned you guys are launching an MDR offering as well that our clients can take advantage of. That's very exciting. Anything else you want to touch on in this slide here?
Yeah, so ultimately, what may seem to be a bit intimidating as a large list of solutions, one thing that you really need to understand is that this is one console, one agent, one protection plan, right? That protection plan, you can be queued up at any time that you like, and it can include anything that you like, whether it be scripting, whether it be patching, whether it be AV, whether it be backup, whether it be, remote access, right, and credentials. When you look at the giant list, especially as a telco who does, just certain focused, topics, it's too much. So when we're looking at this, I urge you or encourage you to look at it as kind of a solution selling, if you will, because
Right.
if they have telephone, all right, that's great. They probably have endpoints. Those endpoints need to be protected. What type of data exists on those endpoints, right? Are you doing data for classification? Do you need to ensure that that data is, protected from any type of leakage?
Mhm.
Who has access to that data, right? How can that data be transferred? How can it be communicated to other people? These are things that if a company employs you to start installing, say just their backbone, these are things you should be educating them on. Hey, you
Right.
have devices. How are you protecting them? You have bring your own devices, mobile devices, things like that that my kids get to access, right?
Right.
How are we going to let that go on the network unprotected? So
That's right.
looking at it as, workstations, they have certain types of data that need protected. Servers have a completely different data set that need to be protected. Do you need
Right.
to have, 24 by 7 MDR on a workstation? Maybe not, maybe that's a good, better, best
Right.
bundle.
Yeah, we'll
But
get to that.
yeah, but I mean, ultimately, it's more so what is critical and what's going to help us mitigate and alleviate any type of pain points that we'll have later, right? So I mentioned earlier that we have our three verticals, right? But obviously, telco segments, it's a little bit different. You've got your business to consumer, you got your business to business, your SOHO, small to medium business, your mid market, your enterprise, your government. There's a lot of overlap, for
Mhm.
different types of offerings out there today. And that may be the reason why telco providers are a little bit intimidated to offer extra services. I already have enough, right? I have too many vendors, too many throats to choke.
Mhm.
That's really where Acronis comes in, right? So as I mentioned earlier, not only do we have this, single home office, we also have enterprise, but we also have our cloud business. And our cloud business really spans everything. Absolutely anybody from you and me utilizing it on our cell phones to using it on our laptops to an MSP who's just started, right? Maybe they're just a one-man shop or a one-woman
Mhm.
shop. They started as break fix for all their family, and they realize that's consuming all their time. They need to, start monetizing on it. It's the
Mhm.
same thing that a telco should be doing. Chances are, as a telco provider, you're probably still acting as the IT provider for your entire family. There's no
Right.
reason why you shouldn't be bringing on other clients, right? So
Yeah.
that's where everything that we have under our umbrella really helps, right? So
Mhm.
everything from detecting an issue to opening up a management console to access that system to ensure that it's not a false positive, right? Making sure that that issue is in fact an issue and that we need to either resolve that issue or we need to harden against that issue. And this could be anything from like an open port, to the easeability of resetting a password.
Right.
It could be many different little nuanced things, but ultimately any type of downtime causes disruption to your business, which causes a lack of cash flow, right? And we
Mhm.
want to make sure that we're increasing that cash flow. We're not reducing it. So not only are we giving you the ability to make more money, but we're giving you the ability to keep that business up and
Right.
functioning a little bit
Yeah.
more effectively than if you just set up their phone lines, right?
The core business. Yeah, you're so right. And I think this kind of reminds me of a conversation I was having quite a bit, like a couple years ago, where the big shift was from that agent type model, where a lot of these telcos were, or even MSPs were signing up as agents for these communication services and providing that to the end customer, and we're just getting a commission, but they were doing all the support anyways. When something didn't work, they're calling that provider. They're not going upstream to Ring Central or 8x8, right? So that's where we kind of recommended our clients shift towards more of that white label model, where you are owning that full client relationship and you're able to make additional margins that essentially offset the overhead that you're spending in support requests, right? So it's kind of a similar thing here that you're saying is you guys are still already fielding those support requests. Why not utilize something that one will make it easier for you to solve those challenges, but two, something you can layer on as an additional service. And the other thing that you mentioned was about like, oh, there's so many different tools out there. Where do I go? I need all these different vendors. You're right. MSPs and communications providers and service providers are thinking this way already. Guess what small, medium sized businesses are doing? They're thinking the exact same thing. I've got too many freaking contracts. I got too many vendors. I need to consolidate. I need to go to someone who can provide me all these services. So I think we've touched quite a bit on the why, right? Commoditization, competition, stickiness. There's a lot of reasons for a communications provider to get into the security space. So look at security as a real opportunity. Now we get to the fun part and the part that I get excited about because we wanted to give our folks some good takeaways here. How do you actually go to market with this if you are a telco? James, you alluded to this a little bit earlier, right? That the packaging strategy. What have you seen work? And for a telco that's watching this and are like, "Holy smokes, this is a lot." Where would you recommend they start?
I mean, first off, have a conversation with the clients that you're working with, right? Find out what it is that they're needing to accomplish. Don't just find out what their needs and requirements for telephony is, right? Ask them what it is that they're going to be doing. Understand their business. Really understand what their business goals are. Because if you don't understand what their business goals are, right, you can't offer any type of consultation. When we're talking about bundling, right, it's always very wise to do a good, better, best. And the reason being good may be great, right? It may be wonderful for most people, but when we're going out and we're purchasing items, right? Are you buying the cheapest option on the shelf or are you buying the most expensive option on the shelf? Chances are for me, I'm buying in the middle, right? And
Right.
the reason being is that there's it's kind of a supply and demand type thing, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it
It's like the
so
fries, right? The McDonald's fries, and you got the shitty little package, and then you got that medium package that's a perfect fit.
yeah, and it's only, a few cents more, right?
That's
It's not
right.
that much
That's
more.
right.
And you'll get so much more value out of it. So I think when we're talking to our clients, right, or just talking to prospects, it's understanding what they want to accomplish first so that you can lay out on the table what options they have available to them. I've talked to many MSPs, many telcos who have an individual customer profile that if it's not met, they don't bring on the
Right.
client.
Right.
That I thought was really neat to learn about over the few years that people were really kind of enforcing that mentality. I've seen a big shift away from that. And the reason being is that maybe an MSP acquires another MSP, right?
Mm,
Or maybe a telco acquires another telco. They
right.
have solutions that are in place that are being utilized, being relied upon that can't just be swapped out immediately because obviously, we don't know how to use it.
Right.
So how do we make it easier, right? And again, I think that's where that Rev.io and Acronis story, the better together. Hey, we have everything under one sun that you can
Mm,
leverage, whether it be you're just providing voice and then also offering backup to the devices that are on those networks.
mhm,
A basic protection, making sure that they have MFA on, making sure that they've got backups, at least once a day or once a week, right?
mhm,
Making sure that one of those backups is offsite. So if something were to happen, we can simply recover from it. All the way up to best, right? Where you have a full on RMM. You don't have to worry about who you're sending to the customer site because we have remote access to every single one of those endpoints. Not only
right.
that, but we could push out patches, we could push updates, we can do reboots, we could do anything that we need because we know at one point in time that that client will need it. Right.
Mhm,
So it comes down to Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, do you want our people coming into your business or into your client's business and fixing things as a third party, or do you want us to make it work on the back end so that they have the least amount of inconvenience, right?
right.
And then land somewhere in the middle where we say, look, it doesn't have to be fully automated everything, right? You can go with a premium bundle for the people who need premium services, but ultimately most people can get away with security, whether it be endpoint, email, comprehensive, and kind of create that tiered bundle. So earlier when we were talking about bundles, we focused a little bit on workstations versus servers. Let's
Mhm,
talk about mailboxes, right? Because
right.
you used to have an exchange database administrator, and that person was the one who had to make sure that your mailboxes were accessible, and you had to be in the office for that. Now that everybody's working from home or working from wherever they'd like to work, San Francisco, uh, they they have a need to be able to access data that's no longer behind a perimeter that we so very much relied on before. So
Right.
how do we do this? Number one, we got to back up those mailboxes. So if something were to go, kablooey, right? Something corrupts that database, we can recover it. Then we also need to do email security, right? We need to ensure that the data that's going to that mailbox is not malicious. And if it is malicious, that we're quarantining it and making sure that that type of mail doesn't get through again. And then from there, security awareness training. Say that somebody did click on something that they shouldn't have clicked on. How do you train them not to do so? How do you make it more effective? Well, as soon as they click on it, they need to know, that's not the magic word, right? And that they
Mhm,
need some training on what it is that they did wrong. They need to be able to identify the compromise, where that IOC really exists. And if nobody here knows what IOC, right? You got indication of compromise. It's knowing that something has gotten through on our system, right?
right.
How do we identify? How do we indicate that something has gone wrong? So again, really, when we're talking about packaging, right? I think understanding the goals of your customer, it doesn't matter what you're selling.
Mhm,
Understand the goals of your customer, right?
right.
Build a relationship with them on that because if you care about their goals, they care about giving you the information that's going to make you successful in offering them these types of services.
Yeah, I think that to add on to that, their goal might not be that, hey, we need to make sure our email is protected. Their goal might be a bigger business goal that we need to make sure our business is protected and we're not dealing with ransomware, we're not dealing with these things. So clients aren't going to come to you saying, we want RMM and for you to be able to remote, right? They're going to be saying things like, hey, my buddy's business just had a cyber attack. There was a huge ransom, this and that. How can I protect myself from that? And then going into, okay, based on what you care about, here are how we can, the solutions that we can provide to you. I think this is also very important on the VoIP side, right? Voice over IP. A lot of these services that our telco clients are providing are running on the network. And guess what? If that network is affected or compromised, to James's earlier point, your core service is now down and you're not, you're going to have support tickets and issues. Folks reaching out to you being like, hey, why is my phone not working? I'm trying to, take client calls. So really, I think it's there's a lot here. There's a lot that we could talk about probably for a really long time. But let's keep it moving here because I really like this slide. We've already kind of touched on some of these things, already, James, about how do you find cross-sell opportunities if you're a communications provider? Where are those? What can your sales team talk about during the conversation that they're having, or your account management team, right? So
Yeah.
we kind of just brainstormed just a few examples, but say you're providing Microsoft 365 services right now, or maybe since this is telco oriented, maybe you're thinking about providing Teams or Operator Connect or some sort of direct routing solution. Maybe there's a backup tie in there. Maybe if they are a Microsoft shop, you know that because you're trying to provide Operator Connect through Teams. Maybe you want to offer email security as well. So a couple of examples. James, I'm sure you've got some good takeaways here.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to go back to that same point that I just made, right? Well, you need to understand what their goals are, right? So again, if you are installing telephony, you're installing infrastructure as a backend, what is it that's using that infrastructure, right? If you're not asking that question, that very simple question,
Right.
what devices are you going to have connected to this network? That right there is going to give you a world of information that you can then start leveraging for your planning, right?
Mhm.
So chances are some type of as a service, software as a service, more than likely is going to be your mailbox, right? So
Mhm.
being able to back that up as I mentioned and have that email security bundled with the security training, that right there, those three, that could be your good, better, best, right? You could
Right.
just do backup. You could do better as backup and email security. You could do best where it has security training on top of it, right?
Right.
To ensure that that type of mistake isn't made again.
Mhm.
Um, but again, we need to think about what data exists on each one of these types of devices because it used to be that we needed to protect these devices to keep our business running, right? Thinking about the web server, right? If the web server goes down, nobody can access our website. They can't,
Mhm.
do an inquiry. They can't hire us. They can't do anything. But their business is still running in the background because it's, behind a firewall, right? It's behind a perimeter that's been safeguarded. Now that everybody's outside of that perimeter, how do we continue to safeguard that business to ensure that they don't have that downtime? It's not just about a website going down. It's about connectivity, right?
Right.
If I don't have access to my email while I'm here in San Francisco, I can't do any work, right? Therefore, I'm
Mhm.
getting paid for doing nothing, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
Nobody wants to pay somebody for nothing, right? So let's talk about how we can show the value behind all the services that we have, right? And ultimately, it's about the people who use those devices. Because
Mhm.
now we've got social engineering that is just quite complex,
Right.
leveraging AI to go and scrape information about people. Now, a threat actor may just sit on your device and monitor and watch so that they
Mhm.
can learn more about you so that when it comes time for you to go and take your spring break or your lunch, you know, that they could send an email to the administrator or to the accounts payable and say,
Right.
I need this taken care of in your exact cadence,
Mhm.
mimicking you better than maybe a family member could. So
Right.
understanding not only, what type of data exists on these devices, but who uses these devices, right? And how can those people who use those devices be leveraged for an attack, right?
Right.
Because it's no longer just your workstations and servers that are being attacked, right? It is much more. So that's where that cloud platform comes in, right? Making sure that we have more security monitoring, more compliance tools, making sure that not only are we monitoring that we have a backup in place, but that we have MFA in place, that everybody has it enabled, that data has been classified, and that private data is not in any type of public share. These
Mhm.
are things that really, that it makes a world of difference to your client, but they don't know to think about it until you bring it up,
Right.
right?
Or
So if you're
until
just going,
it hits the
yeah, go for it.
fan, and then it's like, oh crap, we needed this yesterday, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, being able to implement something because somebody agrees with you is great, but it's better to implement it before it's needed, right?
Mhm.
Because a backup's only as good as what you can recover from it. If we don't have a backup and things hit the fan today, we're rebuilding.
Yeah.
So you also need to think about that cost analysis and share that cost analysis with the client. Look, I've spent all this time building out this infrastructure for you, getting you guys up and running. It costs this much to do. Would you be able to afford me doing that all over again
Great way
because
to position
we
it.
we neglected to
Yeah.
turn on MFA?
Yeah, or we didn't have a disaster recovery posture in place or some way. The server infrastructure one is interesting because a lot of our communications clients do help set up networks. They're selling circuits or selling connectivity, and this is just like what is your backup plan here? What is your disaster recovery plan if things go south? A lot of our clients might not realize it, but they are providing desktops and workstations. Even an IP phone is something that you got to think about. Is this a threat vector? A lot of UCAS obviously is all cloud based, but there's still doesn't happen very often. But installing a UCAS system on a on-prem server that the client just really wants for whatever reason. Maybe they're a healthcare provider or they're a law firm that just has that requirement. This is an additional thing where layering on cybersecurity just makes a lot of sense for I think the reasons that we've said. And the next slide I think is another slide that I really like. I like to call this the money slide because I think if you're a business owner, this really speaks to the huge value you can add to your EBITDA, your top line. With a relatively easy lift. I'm not going to say this is a walk in the park, but I think Acronis and Rev.io have done a really good job in trying to make it as easy as possible. As communication services continue to get commoditized, it's harder and harder to get those multiples that pure connectivity providers did back in, let's say even as recent as COVID. I keep reeling back to that because in my mind, that's when communications really blew up, right? With work from home and everything. That's where a lot of our clients made a lot of money. But unfortunately, with RTO and with Teams and with these other ways that businesses are able to get connectivity these days, that's not the case anymore. On average, these are just average ballparks. We're seeing 7 to 12x EBITDA multiples on managed IT services compared to just 3 to 5x on just connectivity only. James, you touched on M&A a little bit earlier. We obviously see a lot of that. Large organizations, PE firms, and whatnot looking to acquire service providers. And one of the first things that they're looking at is like, what type of a service provider are you? Are you just like a one lane only, one trick pony type of service provider, or can you offer multiple services? What have you seen in terms of investor relations and the effect that cybersecurity can have on multiples?
AI. That's my answer.
Yeah, it's a good
So I
answer
mean, I've seen
anyways.
it's true. So I mean, the idea is being able to do more with less, right? And
Mhm.
one of the big, and I'm gonna toot our horn here for a second, the
All right.
ROC, right?
Well,
So
you're allowed to.
yeah, I mean, I take pride in not over pitching things, but I need people to understand that if you have a business and you have two technicians and you're only protecting 200 endpoints because each one of those technicians can only manage 100 endpoints per technician,
Mhm.
you're missing out on revenue, right?
Yeah.
And you need to understand why it is that they can only you know, manage
Mhm.
100. Now, is it because of that swivel chair tax that we talked about earlier? Is it because there's too many tools and they're jumping from hoop to hoop to hoop to be able to get something done? Maybe there's not even an action needing to be done. They just need to document it, right? There's
Mhm.
still a lot of steps that need to be done before you can close, a case and say, yes, it's been resolved. Um, I see investors are rewarding security because they want to make sure that they don't have to do the remediation, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, remediation is great, but if we could protect them from the remediation, right, that's more uptime, right?
Right.
We're reducing the amount of downtime, we're reducing the amount of business not being able to be done. That's ultimately what it is. So
Mhm.
if you're offering, a method for business to be done, but you're not offering a method for that business to stay working, right? Business
Right.
continuity, then
Yeah.
again, you're missing out on the grand scheme of things because there are so many solutions that are leveraged by these clients, whether by them internally or by a managed service provider of sorts.
Right.
I believe that investors really are looking at, all right, well, how do we grow more? Right? How do
Mhm.
we get more revenue? And the ultimate idea of building more revenue is, bringing on more endpoints to be protected, bringing on more clients to be protected. And it doesn't have to be endpoints being protected. It's a end goal of your business is going to be running, and you don't have to have the headache at 3 a.m. on Easter Sunday because something went down, right?
Right.
That's where the MDR comes into play. That's where
Right.
somebody in a SOC for 24/7, comes in and saves the day for you. These are things that can be automated. And again, the Acronis mentality, our mantra is protect, manage, and automate. Right.
Mhm.
So if you're not protecting the systems, if you're not managing the systems, if you're not automating the processes, there's still room for improvement.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I had a feeling you were going to bring up technician capacity, during this slide, and you slid it in, I think, at the perfect time here. Our marketing team, Billy from our marketing team, put together a really cool resource on our website where if you're a communications provider, you can literally plug in numbers of your current business, plug in your client count, and we'll kind of give you estimates on, hey, here's where you are at right now in terms of your margins that you're making, your EBITDA multiple, and here's where you could be. So I'll try to find a link for that and include in the recording of this, or as a takeaway. But I recommend everybody check that out. Billy did a great job with that, and I think it really kind of highlights this. Higher margins, cybersecurity is one of those things where you can make decent margins on. Reducing churn, of course, again, we've touched on that quite a bit already with additional competition, with increased stickiness, an additional recurring revenue stream. Obviously, everybody wants that these days. And I think the last one is kind of my favorite one here, is having that strategic partner status, where you're not just another vendor that your client can replace with going directly to AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile or whatever that might be, right? You're actually a strategic partner where if they want to get away from you, they're going to have to do a huge lift compared to just, hey, I'm just switching out my phone provider.
Yeah, and I like to look at it as the vendor versus partner. Really, I mean, yes, we vend, all right? We offer solutions, but
That's right.
but we wouldn't have solutions that were worthwhile if we didn't listen to the feedback of our partners. And I mean, that's the reason why I'm in the role that I'm in today, right? I started as a solutions engineer and I took all the feedback of things that were working and I gave kudos to those who built it. But I also took back the feedback of what could be better. And it's not
Right.
necessarily, oh, it's bad. It's more, hey, I thought it would work this way and it works this way. Could we get it to work that way? Well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, of course. If that's going to make your job easier and make it easier for your technicians to close more tickets or to be able to mitigate more tickets or to be able to manage more endpoints, yes, absolutely. And that's where we really take on that partner attitude. It's no longer just, hey, buy more Acronis, use more security, use some RMM, use our PSA, use this.
That's right.
It's and I think that kind of shines from my original statement. Talk to your clients, talk to your prospects, understand what their business goals are. You'll never meet a business owner who doesn't want to talk about their business. It
Right.
just they built a business for a reason. They want to talk about it. And
That's
if you
right.
can give them a better version of their business, you're going to be their best friend, right? If you can help them make more money, they're going to help you make more money, right? I can't tell you how many MSPs, how many other vendors out there have gotten some type of advice along the way and became better because of it. Now, it
Mhm.
comes down to how you receive that advice and then how you implement that advice. I can get advice all day, but if I don't start taking baby steps, stepping stones to implement that in my day to day, it doesn't make a difference.
Mhm.
Now, it may be a little bit intimidating to try something new, right? But I mean,
This
this
is
is
good.
a great example of AI, right? You've
Yeah.
got people who are afraid of AI. They're afraid they're going to take our jobs. Well, no, they're going to replace people who don't do their jobs in the first place, right?
Right.
Because the people who don't do their jobs are going to leverage AI to do their job for them. And that AI is going to learn how to do that job versus folks like yourself and myself who are going to leverage it as a tool
Mhm.
versus as a replacement. It's a complement. It's not a replacement. It's, hey, I work from home day in, day out, and I don't have the luxury of sitting at a boardroom with four other individuals who have different thought process than I do.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
can talk to Claude, Gemini, and to Chat GPT, and they've
There
got some
you go.
different
That's your
ideas,
boardroom.
right? Right. So do I trust everything that they say? Oh no, absolutely not. Am I looking forward to the Terminator coming to my house? No, absolutely not. But I do know that I can leverage tools to make my job easier and to make myself more effective. So again,
Absolutely.
right, if we're launching in 30 days, it's just
Yeah, I
about
was
hitting the
gonna
ground.
say, what would you do
Yeah.
if you were to start this up, from the ground up, 30-day plan? we'll cover a more detailed, extensive, 7-month plan. But let's talk about a 30-day plan. Where would you start?
You got to start, right? You got to hit the
Yeah.
ground running. So, I mean, first things first, if you're afraid of failure and you're not going to start because you're afraid of failure, you're already failed, right? You need to fail, you need to fail fast so that you can then change and adapt, right? So ultimately, if we're looking to launch something, right, a full MSP organization, it's not necessary. Like you don't need a ton of people, you don't need a treasury, you don't need AP, you need yourself, and you need a mission. And that mission is to protect, manage, and automate all of your customers, whether that be from a telco point of view or from a more cyber umbrella point of view, right?
Hmm.
So first week or two, right, you need to understand what tools you're using, how you're going to use them. Now, if you have 30 different siloed tools, that's not going to take you 1 to 2 weeks. It's going to take much longer than that.
Right.
Now, when we're looking at a all-in-one, seamlessly integrated and natively, put together platform, this is where you have the ability to go through and say, okay, well, out of those four, vectors, right? Your workstations, your servers, your mailboxes, your mobiles, what all can I do? Well, first off, let's get some backup on there. Let's make sure that those systems are protected. And then let's see what else that we need to investigate, because chances are these people are getting some type of virus. Maybe they're getting phishing campaigns, right? So now we're looking at mailboxes, right? We started with workstations, we started with mobile phones, because these are the devices that leave the network that I
Hmm.
built for you. When they
Hmm.
leave the network that I built for you, I'm no longer responsible,
Right.
right? Well, that's great and all, but somebody is responsible. So
Yeah.
let's make it so that you can reap the benefits of that, right? So you reap what you sow. If you've built the network and you have the devices using the network, it's time
That's
to
right.
time to put those together, right? It's time to marry them, right?
Okay.
From there, after you understand that you have a solution for everything that they offer or that they need, not that they offer, but everything that they need, right? For their backbone, for their endpoints, for their edge, for their disaster recovery. That's when we start going into thinking about our bundles, right? That good, better, best, and saying,
Hmm.
look, you don't have to buy everything from one vendor. Most people are afraid of putting all their eggs in one basket, which I
Right.
understand completely. At
Hmm.
this point in time, though, everything's run off of AWS or Azure. So as soon as that goes down, you're screwed.
That's right.
What are you doing when that happens? So again, you have the ability to go through and kind of build out bundles and have these very intelligent conversations with your prospects about what could happen, not what will happen, what
Hmm.
could happen, right? Because what will happen is absolutely worst things. We don't want to sit there and say what will, it's what could, because if we have a plan for what could happen, then we have an incident response plan and we can handle that. It's not a problem. From there, right, after we've figured out all the tools that we have to offer, how we want to sell it, how we want to bundle it, right? That's where we start enabling everybody, right? And we say, look, you can simply install this Acronis agent. You can leverage Rev.io to do all of your billing, to do all of your service desk ticketing, to understand, where that time is being spent by that technician.
Hmm.
Here's everything that we are going to bill for, how we're going to bill for it, and make sure that everybody feels comfortable, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, hit the ground running, right?
Yeah.
Again, understanding what that vision is of that customer is going to allow you to really dig deeper into what services they could benefit from. They don't know yet that they would benefit from these services from you, but they know that somebody
They need it
somewhere
from
is going to
somewhere.
need to, yeah,
Yeah.
somebody's going to need to protect this device.
Yeah.
Um, and if you think that M365 is protecting your data in your mailbox, I
I'm sure you
encourage
got
you.
tons of stories about that,
I,
eh?
I encourage you to wipe your database and see, right,
Mhm.
or there are too many bad things. I'm not asking you to go and perform something malicious on your on your Azure, but
That's right.
ultimately, we want you to be able to be protected and to feel confident that you're protected. Not only that you're
Yeah.
protected, but that if something were to get through that protection, that you're capable of remediating and resolving and recovering in as fast of time as possible, right? That mean time to recovery is real. It used to be the RTO, now it's the mean time to recovery.
Right.
It's about how long did it take from when we identified this issue to actually doing the recovery? Because a recovery time objective, great. Recovery point objective, all right, I can go back a certain point in time. But if that certain point in time is still infected, that doesn't
Mhm.
help us, right?
Right.
And that's not being billed for, right? Because we screwed up, right? We didn't go and recover the right data.
Yeah.
That's where, not only having that AV on site helps, but also having the Acronis threat research unit looking at the data that's stored in the cloud and saying, hey, there's still some malicious content here. If you were to recover this recovery point, we're not going to let you recover these pieces of executable malware.
Right, because they're affected. That makes total sense, and I think that's, the key takeaway that I got from what you were saying is, again, you can be aggressive. You can literally launch this in 30 days if you wanted to, and you don't need to be a full MSP. You don't need to have a lot of staff on hand to manage this. With some of the, like, the single agent console that Acronis has, with some of the AI solutions that we've got enabled in Cyber Protect as well. This can really be a very profitable business stream that doesn't require as much overhead. One thing I can't emphasize enough, if we are looking at more of a longer term implementation approach here, one thing I can't emphasize enough is that both Acronis and Rev.io want to be partners with you in this venture, not just a vendor. We want you to utilize us. Rather than being overwhelmed yourself, let's get overwhelmed together. And in all seriousness, we've got a lot of really great resources that help. James, if you could talk about Acronis Academy for a little bit, because I think Acronis
Yeah.
is freaking amazing, man. It's like MSP business model in a box, essentially, for a service provider. Everything from sales training to technical training to marketing resources. Who first talk about like why you guys even built that, and then what it does.
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of stems off the partner program, right?
Mhm.
Partners are our lifeline. That's our lifeblood. If we don't have happy partners, we don't have a product that is worthwhile for anybody. So ultimately, it's about how do we make their technicians a little bit more effective. If you've ever worked a support queue, if you've ever submitted a help desk ticket, you know that you get that auto-generated response. Hey, we got your ticket. Just to let you know, we got your ticket. Now we've bought ourselves 48 hours before I actually have to respond to you,
Right.
which, as a technician is kind of, that's the bane of their existence, right? Nobody wants to, you know number one, they don't want to submit the ticket. Number two, they
Mhm.
don't want a canned response. With that being said, utilizing the Acronis Academy as an MSP or as a telco, somebody who offers our services, if you go through our academy training for support, you can bypass that tier one, right? You can completely bypass that and get access to an actual technician who's going to help you out. The fact that we have RMM capabilities means that we can remote into those systems, right? We can help you with those things, right? Um, so where does Academy really come into play? Well, I started somewhere, right? When I first started, I was taking CompTIA classes in a
Mhm.
networking class, right?
Right.
And from there, I never thought I'd be in the role that I am today. I thought I would just work in support and do networking, right?
Mhm.
But so many things have changed since then that have opened doors. And if we don't understand what's available to us, and we'll never ever take advantage of it. So when we're looking at education, it's not just about support technicians, right? It's about marketing, right? It's about
Mhm.
salespeople. It's
Mhm.
about, what do you need to run your business? We've
Right.
been very focused on MSPs, but historically, right, that stems from telco. And
Mhm.
I'm just going to go ahead and say, telco, you guys offer services. You are a managed service provider,
Right.
whether you want to call it that or not. You are a specific managed service provider, right, or a managed specific service provider, right?
Right.
But the idea here, y'all, is that if you don't know something, where do you go to learn? YouTube's great, but if you're not able to utilize something that's more hands-on
Mhm.
and shows you this is what you've learned, now put it into action, it it kind of falls on deaf ears. Like, yeah, I can read a book, but until like I act out the play, or I can read, a script, a manuscript, but until I actually act out that character, I can't get into that role, right? And
Mhm.
I think it's the same thing for a technician, for a marketer, and also let's take this away from calling marketers just marketers. This may be a marketer who has experience in non-service provider, right? Non-services.
Right.
Maybe they did something for a completely different company. Marketing people are astounding. Like I've just joined the marketing team. I don't understand how these people do their job, right? Kudos to marketing people. Now, people like Usman and myself are here to make sure that you understand what type of people we deal with, right? So that you're not just marketing to the ethers. So
That's
again, it's about understanding, hey, this is backup, this is disaster recovery, this is antivirus, this is patching, this is vulnerability checking. How does this all make sense to a technician? great.
Mhm.
That's all in the academy, and you can get trained up and get certified. We've got some great, certificates that you can post on LinkedIn or wherever you'd like. Say, hey, I'm Acronis certified. That's awesome. But I think that taking a step further and then talking to sales leaders about sales management, talking to
Mhm.
salespeople about sales cycles, talking to marketing about what is actually catching the eye of the clients of a service provider, that right there is it's
Mhm.
huge for an organization. So our academy is wonderful, right? It's a really good learning management system. It's free. You can go and take these classes, and if you have, a need, we can even send people on site to do a more specific, individualized training. And I
Absolutely.
got to take a second to say, we also have our cyber foundation program.
Oh yeah.
We build out schools in underprivileged locations, right? I believe we just built a school in Senegal. Not only do we build the school, but we start outfitting it with technology. We work with our customers and our partners to help with that as well. So I've had MSPs, I've had telcos, I've had distributors come with us on these treks to go and build schools. This builds such camaraderie between people while also strengthening, our foundational goals.
Absolutely. That's awesome, man. I think it's really, not only are we giving you the tools that you need to launch this new business venture, potentially new business venture, but we also want to make sure you're successful, right? Because again, nobody wins if these tools are just sitting and not getting out there. So we want to give you the training, the technical training, the sales training, the marketing training, and generally how we would, sort of lay it out is kind of like this almost like 7 month implementation roadmap where we're focusing on the low-hanging fruit at the start, business model definition, figuring out packaging and bundling, which we've talked about in quite a bit of detail, getting everything hooked together from a billing point of view. You're automating as much as possible. And then we move into enablement, where again, Acronis Academy is going to be a huge asset. Having those trainings, Acronis has been fantastic from even for Rev.io training point of view. Getting folks like James or Steve on calls to really provide some great insights, do role plays. So we want to be able to support you really in those scenarios, and then finally from there, how can we scale things up to the next level? It looks like we had a slight hiccup with James, but he's back. I don't know where I
Yeah,
cut
so
off.
yeah, no, it was basically I just finished talking about the foundation, and then my hotel internet decided, oh hey, it's 10, we're gonna kick you off. So sorry about
No, no,
that.
no worries. That was good timing, and I want to keep that blooper in there because I always love when we have little funny things like that happen.
It's
James,
real life, right? These are the things that we protect against.
that's right, exactly. Now imagine if that was a cyber threat and you couldn't have gotten back on. How much of a disaster would that be? Uh,
Absolutely. Or connectivity to your client site, right? And at the moment, data is being encrypted and you're trying to find the root cause, and all of a sudden you lose access. What
that's
do you
right.
do?
Well, I think we can start wrapping it up now. I know we probably kept everybody for long enough. I think this really sums it up well, right? If you're a telco or service provider with a pure connectivity play, I genuinely think you're leaving money on the table. You're not reaching your full business potential by ignoring cybersecurity, security in general, or relying on. We have a partner for that, right? Well, guess what? That partner is looking at what you're doing as a way of growing their business.
Hmm.
So I really believe we've got this fantastic partnership. We've put together essentially a business in a box solution here for you guys, and we would love to chat with you if this is something you're more interested in. Please, I think there's a QR code. Yep, there's a QR code at the end. You can fill out that form and reach out to us. You can email me directly. My email is just Usman at Rev.io. We can put that in the takeaways as well. But with that being said, James, again, really appreciate your insights and you spending some time with us today. Any final words you want to share with our audience?
Just don't hesitate from having these conversations. And again, if you are very you're satisfied with the services that you offer today and you don't want to take on more services, at least know who you can recommend and refer, because that speaks volumes to your prospects as you're bringing on new people and you're showing them, hey, I can provide you these services and I know you're going to need these services, so let me recommend this guy. It's almost like getting a house built, right? And having a plumber that's also friends with the electrician. I can't tell you how many times these two people are fighting against each other to get work done. If you're fighting against each other, you're not being effective, right? We need to cooperate or co-opetition, right? So again, I urge you to take on the services that you're leaving on the table. But if you don't want to, at least pair up, right? Buddy up with a company that does, because that's going to speak so much louder to your customers, to your prospects, than saying, all right, yeah, I'm just going to do this part for you and then call me if anything breaks, right? Obviously, there's a better relationship between a telco and their partner, but in my mind, right, I believe very, very strongly that if we're not having a full conversation about what their goals are, we can't show them everything that we can offer, right? And again, there's so much more that you could be offering.
That makes total sense. Well, once again, thanks, James. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening to us ramble for an hour here. We hope you had some good takeaways, and we're looking forward to chatting with you. The next webinar will be with our very own Brooke Lee again, so definitely tune in for that as well. And have a wonderful day. Thanks, James.
Take care.